Today I'm cooking Welsh food and I'm going to be making Lavercakes, lamb cawl and Welsh cakes. So starting off with the Lavercakes, I foraged some laver on the west coast. It grows prolifically around Wales, obviously. This was actually in Liverpool, so I could see Wales. It counts. Laver is this thin sheet-like seaweed. You can see it like hanging down like this, and when you spread it out, it's quite large. It's not the most attractive seaweed in the world, but it's, like I say, it's very prolific, so it's not hard to pick a load of it. Just have to do it at low tide, like all seaweed, which is annoying. I was definitely racing the tide. I harvested it before I was going to make this, so I ended up drying it in my dehydrator. And traditionally, it's a good way of preserving seaweed, just to dry it. So when I was ready to make it, I boiled it. So here I am starting the boiling, and I'm using a bit of vinegar as well to help the process along. So this needs a long cook to pulverize. So you can see this is after 8 hours. It has finally pureed. Traditionally in Wales, it used to be made because boiling for that long just was too expensive. They would knead it, like pulverize it manually, which is probably where the laverbread of this came from, because laverbread is basically the name for this pulverized seaweed. And to make the actual lavercakes are not actually cakes. They are basically laver and oats. So I'm just mixing in the oats here as well as some buckwheat flour, just to kind of get it in stodgy enough to kind of fry off. It ends up resembling something kind of similar to like black pudding type of thing. Yeah. Except obviously there's no meat. I'm also just frying off some bacon. So traditionally this is a breakfast food. So it would either go with like a fry up or just with bacon, for example. And it's cooked in the bacon. So, the bacon fat. So here I am frying it off, and largely it darkens up quite a lot. So it's a little hard to tell if it's burnt or not. But it's quite a cool thing to do. I've never made it before. I've never foraged for laver before. I usually go for other seaweeds that I then dry and use as seasoning rather than this, but I'm definitely going to be doing this again because I really liked it. The flavour is really hard to describe. It's definitely very unique. It's got that typical like umami seaweedy flavour, but it's a lot milder. It tastes kind of like, if, like I say, it reminds you of black pudding in appearance, and if you like imagine what would vegan black pudding taste like, this is basically it. But I really rate this, so I'll definitely next time I'm picking laver, I'll be making this again because I love it. And you can just eat, the raw laver bread anyway. And onto the lamb cawl. Lamb cawl. I'm using lamb shoulder for this, so again, a relatively cheap cut. Cutting that up, I could cook the shoulder whole, but it's quite a big shoulder, and also I just find it easier to do that. And the vegetables: leek, carrot, Swede, potato, parsnip and onion. It's very traditional to use kind of these root vegetables. It's probably a bit of a weird time of year I'm doing this, given it's May, and this is definitely more of like an autumn thing, but whatever. I don't use Swedes very much, so it's kind of fun to do that. And I don't use leeks very often, even though leeks are great. Leeks are, oniony if you're not familiar with them. And parsnips I don't really use much outside of, like Christmas dinners really, so it's nice to do that. But like I say, this is definitely something I'll probably do again in autumn, winter time rather than spring. But I really wanted to do this now just because I had picked all the laver recently and I was just really, really excited to finally use it. But yeah, so I'm just going to be cutting up the vegetables quite small. So my plan for this is to cook down the meat for a while and then add in the vegetables a bit later, just because some of the recipes I saw recommend leaving the vegetables in for quite a long time and cooking it for ages. The problem with that I have is then the potatoes especially really start to soften up too much, which I'm not a huge fan of. So meh. But I am just browning off the meat. I've floured it lightly. I'm just browning off so that it's got that slightly crispiness to it. And again, I've reserved the bones on the side like I usually do, because who doesn't want more flavour off the bones? And now I'm just adding in the water, and I will be cooking this for 4 hours or so. There's not really, well, there is too long because then it will break up too much, but that's not a bad thing. And now after 4 hours, I'm adding in the parsnips, the Swede, the carrots, and the potatoes. As you can tell, I just transferred it into a much bigger pot because the pot I was using was nowhere near big enough, which is annoying. Because this massive pot doesn't work on my induction hob. Lame. But anyway, just adding that in that water, and then I'm going to be cooking this in the oven now for about another hour. And also the onion and leek, I don't really like to just throw it in, so I am just going to be pan frying them off separately just to caramelize a little bit, and then adding them in. So lamb cawl. Cawl is basically, it's a stew. It's Welsh stew. It's known as the national dish. I believe the word cawl actually it actually kind of means cabbage or stem, something like that. It's very it doesn't really relate hugely to what it means, but essentially kind of like laverbread. It's a traditional old-fashioned Middle Ages food that was made from kind of what was around. So lamb obviously is massive in Wales. They have a heck of a lot of sheep, more sheep than people, if you didn't know that. And so it's kind of just using up like traditional root vegetables, lamb that they would have had, and hence the same for the laver, it's using up seaweed that they had. And I'm going to be garnishing it with parsley, so I am just taking off a bunch of parsley that I've grown, because it does grow well here. But there are other herbs that you can add in that, again, traditionally grow here, rosemary and the like. And then I'm just going to be throwing it in at the end after it's cooked down for another hour or so to soften up the vegetables. So in total it's been cooking for at least 5 hours. So it's definitely a long process, like most stews are, really, but I can tell you it was very much worth it. It is a really, 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 really good stew. I mean, there are a lot of great stews out there, but this one, it was just really nice. The Swede and parsnip in particular I really like, because they have like that hint of sweetness in them. It was just really good. And I mean, lamb is really good, but I mean, for all intents and purposes, it's a simple peasant stew. Mining families in traditional Welsh rural areas would be eating this, and that's kind of like how it came about. And it's cool to just, again, be able to use like local ingredients, not seasonal particularly, but yeah. And onto the Welsh cakes. So Welsh cakes are basically very simple little pan cooked cakes, flour, butter, sugar, sultanas or raisins. Throw a bunch of eggs in there just to form it up into a thick dough, and then cut them out into circles and pan fry them. Reasonably simple. Again, not something I made before. I have an allergy to baking, but this was actually reasonably easy, and the recipe is definitely forgiving of a bit of variation, which is cool, because if the dough doesn't form correctly, then it's obvious. Rolling out is probably my least favourite bit. I just hate rolling things out. I never do it right. But it was fine. And this dough doesn't like shrink, so it was it's definitely, as far as a baking process goes, it was cool. And it's, again, this is another traditional Welsh food that comes from just, using things up, high energy sweet snack for, miners that need that energy, or just people to have like with their afternoon tea. And it's kind of like the Welsh alternative to, say, a scone in England, and it kind of has that consistency, except for the fact that you'd cook this in a pan, like I say, rather than in the oven like you would a scone. So I guess there is that difference, although I think they're quite similar in theory. I mean, these are made with self-raising flour, which is why they are puffing up, and they are an absolute pleasure to cook, by the way. I had like three or four pans on the go just to get them done a bit quicker, because they do take a few minutes each, and as always I was making far too much, mainly because I know these are good. I have only ever had shop bought ones, but they're so beautiful. No, they were so good, and they were definitely easier to make, and they came out exactly how I expected them to. So Welsh cakes are quite like a dry good, and they are meant to be like that. They are meant to be very dry, but they are really nice with a massive cup of tea. I had some blackcurrant curd that I was dipping them in that was really, really good. And all this food was amazing. And I'll definitely be making it again.